Hello, everybody. It is that time of the week. It is your illustrious hosts, Dragon's Fury and Infernal Drake.
Hope everyone's having a good week.
And if not, we hope this makes it better. We are joined by the one, the only, a Nightwolf. Say hi.
Oh,
Big man in the house.
Big Mil- Yep, love it, love it. We know we've been telling you guys about this for a while now. We've been trying to make it happen. We finally got it to be happening for our show series that we have started, and this is going to be a fun one because the topic for today is going to be Stargate SG-1. For those of you who are not a Patreon member yet, that's where we did the announcement. So if you don't want to miss out on those kinds of things anymore, be sure to join the Patreon. The link is going to be in the description. We're going to do a quick shout out to all of our audience regions because it looks like we have picked up a new one. Since we have hit so many, we are going to do the speed round, so bear with me, but thank you everyone from all of the various geographic locations. So obviously, thank you everybody who are supporting us here in the States. Next, we are shouting out Australia, the UK, Japan, Canada, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, Singapore, Mexico, India, South Africa, Ireland, Colombia, Sweden, Norway, Serbia, Germany, Senegal, Belgium, Kuwait, Mozambique, Finland, Mali, the Falkland Islands, Vietnam, Panama, Taiwan, Malta, the Republic of Lithuania. Don't know where you guys are specifically, but we still love you. The Netherlands, Austria, Greece, Israel, Pakistan, Spain, and our newest member to the lineup, Egypt. Thank you all for.
Which is very fitting for the topic.
Yes, it does. It does fit, and I'm very surprised that I did not catch that sooner. But that's beside the point.
But thank you all for joining in.
Yes, so just like we did for Teen Titans, we are going to delve deep into a very long-running show that is near and dear to most of the sci-fi community's hearts, and if not, I don't believe you. Stargate SG-1. So,
I feel like if anyone has dabbled in sci-fi at any stage of their life, like they would have heard of Stargate at some point.
yes, at some point. So, we are going to
Even if it
start
was
things
just
off
passing.
with Nightwolf. What was your first impression of the show when it started, or when you first came into contact with it?
well, my first contact with it was actually the movie, so I was kind of excited to see what they were going to do when they turned it into a series. So that was good. And when they announced who kind of like who the characters was going to be, and Richard Dean Anderson was going to be Colonel O'Neill, that was like, oh, okay. I like him. I've seen him in a lot of his other stuff. Like he was the original MacGyver. So that's kind of like, all right, like we got a strong leader for this little group.
Yeah, he made a really good O'Neill.
He definitely took hold and ran with it. I do remember when I had the opportunity of meeting him at MegaCon that the room was very divided in a good way. There were
Wait, what
those
was
who um, got to see him as MacGyver because they're from that generation when that show was active, and then you had the kind of like the middle section of when Stargate became the take hold, and then you kind of had like the later gen of who inherited both from the other two, and it was really cool to see that it kind of like spanned from all of that he was able to connect with, as MacGyver, and then he becomes, Jack O'Neill and any other of the stuff that he was in, all of those people that knew because they, big fans. It just, everyone was there, but you could see the clear division of people based off of like the questions that were being asked and kind of like the discussion that was coming. You could kind of hear it was like when he would say something specific to like maybe MacGyver, you hear is like, oh yeah, oh life is so sad, and like the murmurs and the happy that would come with that, right? And then same thing with like SG-1, those kind of like in deep in those episodes moments, whereas like you only knew if you if you knew, if you were in the know, it was like, yeah, that was peak. And then the other ones who are just like, yeah, I remember the show. It was a good time. They weren't like super deep in it, but it was like, oh yeah, no, I don't feel like I wasted my time on it. Um, so I cannot remember actually when I like came on board with Stargate, because I remember the show first and then kind of going back to the movie. So I don't know where I actually started and then kind of like filled in the blanks of the older stuff and then kept going into the future. Um, do you remember your starting point, Infernal?
Um, ooh, I'm trying to think because honestly, oh God, I'm really trying to think because the main two starting points I can think of was one, the movie, because Sci-Fi Channel was playing it a good amount back then. Um, but I honestly would probably say one of the first episodes I saw for Stargate was probably God, it wasn't the first episode. I think it was when Teal'c like officially joined,
Okay.
like SG-1 and all that.
Okay. I feel like that's still fairly early in the beginning seasons.
Yeah. Now the episode I remember the best is the black hole episode.
I believe Tilt came in probably either mid first season or toward the start of the second season. I'm
um,
trying to remember if.
I mean Teal'c first showed up in the first episode because he kidnapped the kid.
Well, yeah,
I
I
feel
mean,
like
as far as when he first joined,
oh
the
yeah, officially joined.
kind of came over.
I feel like he if yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think he like officially joined SG-1. I think near the end of season 1.
Right. Probably so. I think that was probably when they revealed him that the goal wasn't actual gods.
Yeah,
They
the worm,
they were like and that
wormy things.
they were
Eh,
symbiotes.
it's like, haha, we can do it. And so another big name, or at least a big name now, is Christopher Judd, and
Yeah.
he he really, I feel like he really took a gamble on Stargate, because I'm trying to figure out, because that was back when, because it was what, 97 was the start of SG-1.
Yes.
Um, so that was very early career for him. Um, and actually looking at it, apparently he was with. Oh, okay. So apparently he was deep with Richard. He did some episode. He did a episode in MacGyver. With the with Richard, and so that's interesting that they basically came to the second show again. But Christopher didn't really have a lot of like front line things that early in his like career. So I feel like it was a big risk for him to be like joining something because sci-fi, I feel like, and you'll probably have a better inclination of this, Nightwolf, of sci-fi was still kind of like that thing that, yes, it was around, but it wasn't as, I would say, socially acceptable or like socially consumed as much back then as it is now.
Well, yeah, I believe that sci-fi before they changed their name to the F with the Y instead of the I. They they
Which
had
is so dumb.
again.
He was so dumb when they did that.
Oh, that um. So yeah, they it was pretty much the beginning of with the when they started with the sci-fi network. It was like, oh yeah, wow, sci-fi is something dedicated to that the network was really uh, consumed by the diehard sci-fi people, or as our people was called, the nerds. So the shows start. I think the shows that they had on there probably had a slow start, kind of a slow burn, of getting more people on board. But once they started having some really good shows and stuff, I think that's was as it started to evolve, and you find out that the sci-fi genre and the pool of people who do sci-fi was not really that deep, because people were on all different shows, because the actors, it was like, oh, okay, wait a minute, you was in this show, or we was in that show, or you did an episode here, there.
Yeah,
That's
that made those episodes very interesting.
Yeah. I just did a little quick, uh, on the interwebs, and Tilk actually did some episodes of the show Andromeda,
Oh, really?
and that was a pretty popular show. So I think so it may not have been as big of a gamble for him being on Stargate, because he's kind of like was already in you know the realm of doing sci-fi type of thing, because Andromeda was a pretty uh pretty decent show, and it lasted for several seasons. So,
Now, was he like
but
a frontline character, or was he kind of like one of those consistent
no.
but like background characters?
Well, according to the listing here, he only actually did 2 episodes of it, but I don't know exactly which episodes they were. So, as far as how impactful his performance was at the time,
Right. Okay.
but
Well,
then so
I
so
guess
yeah,
it's safe to
so
say
but I
that
think once Tilk, I mean, Christopher Judge being in the, like I say, the sci-fi field type of thing, that once you kind of got in there, and you kind of made a pretty decent splash, or you had because some people may have done one episode, and they stood out. It's like, oh, you forget that all these other people in the room, because this person kind of stole the scenes whenever they were on camera, and stuff. So you become really known for that, just like with Amanda Tapping, which I figure you'll be moving on to her at some point. She's done a lot of other stuff too, but you know, she kind of has that personality type of thing, that when she's on the screen, she kind of steals the scene a little bit.
yeah, she was definitely strong presence for the show as well, which gave it such a nice like core of it. Richard, Amanda, Chris, and then Michael, all kind of like feeding off of each other's performances and how there's everything was going. And what I really enjoyed was that Stargate, hands down, and I will die on the hill, not like I need to, but I will, is one of the greatest written shows, because they had one overarching concept that they stuck to, and it was never forced, it was never pandering, it was never, oh god, I can't get my time back, because it was so vague but specific at the same time. So you had the vague part being that, oh, we are exploring the universe in the sense of the most unknown fashion. We have a door, and we have zero idea what's on the other side of that door. Um,
We're going to press
but
buttons and see what happens.
right, but it was still specific enough, because it wasn't just, oh, hey, here's just random thing that's happening on the other side of this proverbial door. It's a, we as the human race are coming into contact and learning of a long standing history that we were not privy to, and trying to figure out, oh, what's been like, oh, so this is what's been going on. Does this actually affect us, or are we just like so far down on the totem pole that we couldn't fathom it affecting us? And that's essentially what the Goa'uld was. They were that overarching entity that were like, is it Eldridge level, or is it just we were just too far removed? Like, can we not understand, or we just have not been able to have the time to understand? And there was always that reference with all of the different episodes, because you would have the episodes that were very heavy with the Goa'uld, they're fighting them directly. There, you got somebody infiltrating over here, you got someone infiltrating over there, you find out there's, this split faction over here, and then you have oh, by the way, here's the armada that's just been wiping everyone out in its path up to this point, but because, the universe is so vast, no one was really privy to this information, because the ones that did know they were coming are dead. So
I think also like you're saying, with the overall the arc whatever. I also think that because I think the discovery that humans were kind of not necessarily original to Earth, and um, but the fact that the Earth's gate had gotten buried, they were kind of like cut off from all the other crazy that was going on out there in the universe. So I think if their gate had never been buried, then the Gaul probably would have been more prominent earlier on.
Most likely. And heck, I mean, Earth had 2 gates.
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, they actually had. I think they ended up with three, but
Wait, when did the third one show up? Because I remember the one in Egypt and the one in the Arctic.
um,
Oh,
yeah,
Antarctica.
one in Antarctica. But I think wasn't there one that they found that was actually um, buried in the ocean somewhere? Or
Uh,
or am I or am I thinking about another planet that they went to
I
that
know
had?
that Stargate Atlantis had one that was underwater.
The whole, I feel like there was one underwater, because I feel like it was, I remember
Oh,
like the scene of like being trapped there.
now no, it was maybe no, it wasn't the it wasn't or the Soviet Union had one, and theirs was like in a power plant.
Okay.
Oh, that was the oh my God, wasn't that the one where they time traveled for the first time?
Um, I'm not sure if that was the first. Was that the first time they traveled? I think it was something that they found out that the Soviets had one because they ended up having to make a deal so that they could use it.
And no one wants to make a deal with the Soviets. um, and so another thing that I really enjoyed in the great way of how they set this up is that they didn't make humanity that like cliche of, oh, we think we are superior to everybody no matter like what it is. There's that just, I don't know if that's just like the ego of a human to put ourselves in that like state of power slash superiority. That's anyone's guess, but I do know that a lot of shows in various genres that will always kind of have humans as this, not necessarily a savior, but almost the wild card that turns the tide of things, because it's like, oh, they underestimated us and they didn't see it coming or whatnot. And I was like, all right. The only time that I felt like that worked out was in War of the Worlds. And, we win because, come to find out, our planet is just a giant petri dish. We're just one giant germ bucket. And so when the alien like life forms made contact, they weren't able to handle it, which made so much sense, because to assume that you come to a whole nother planet in a whole other environment and, completely different circumstances of life, to automatically assume that they would be accustomed to the atmosphere in any capacity is bonkers, especially without like taking precautions for it, because you do have some instances where there's like, oh, they're on another planet or whatever, and they have their own kind of like biosuits that maintain an environment for them to survive on our world or what have you, and vice versa. Different stories are saying it was like, oh, you have to change like the gravity for them, and which tangent. But some of my favorite stories that comes out of Reddit is about humans on intergalactic projects, because from that perspective, everyone else in the universe understands that humans don't make sense and they shouldn't exist, because it's framed that everything that happened on Earth was done in such a way that it's basically death for anyone else. A lot of these stories view Earth as a death world, and they're like, what do you mean you have this poisonous gas in the air all the time that is flammable? What do you mean you use these particular substances that cause bodily pain as a means of seasoning? What do you like, stuff like that of humanity that, when you think about it outside of ourselves, does not make sense, and it's just so much of a joy. And I feel like the writers for Stargate had the same idea, because you had, for example, the Asgards. Our favorite gray little aliens.
Yeah, the Asgardians.
They didn't stick around on the planet. They stayed in their respective ship. Like, Earth was a terrible place to walk on. Like, they were like, yeah, we'll help these guys, but I'm not living there. Like, I'm staying in my ship, in the safety of my ship. I'm not letting the gook touch me.
Also,
Then
speaking of,
I believe that like the Asgardians, they also, and pretty much a lot of other alien races didn't look at humans as being smart enough or advanced enough to really handle the fact that they're, they think that there are other life forms in out there, but they really wasn't sure, and or or in of how to handle that if it actually came true. It's kind of like, oh, I think I want to meet an alien, and then when you do, you lose your mind.
like,
He was like, oh my god.
Yeah,
You weren't
yeah,
ready.
yeah.
yeah. But I
Speaking of,
also like the. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
oh no, I was just gonna say, back to the early topic about the Russians having a Stargate. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
due to Thor.
Oh,
Because I was curious, so I looked up. So yeah, it was during season 4. Because Thor's ship was attacked by the replicators. Uh, the Stargate that was on his ship got taken by the Russians.
okay.
I,
So
I
that's how they
completely
ended
forgot
up.
about this episode.
So that's how they ended up with another one. You know.
Yeah, because I was like, I swear to God, Earth only had 2 Stargates. I was like, which one?
Which one? It was Thor's.
God damn it, Thor!
He dropped it.
But
To be
Thor's
fair,
was the ones the Russians had, and there was one in the
Yes,
Antarctica too, right?
yes.
And
There's one in
then the one
Antarctica,
and the
and
one
the
they
one
found in
in
Giza.
yes.
Okay, all right. So my brain isn't completely mush right now.
No, and
But
there was water, because that entire episode dealt with an alien species that was basically water.
yeah, and I think that's um two things that I'm sorry. Um,
oh no, he
am I
used the
supposed to
real
be?
names.
I'm using names. I'm
Oh my
sorry.
God!
Oh, oh,
I
okay,
thought your name was
okay.
Doug.
Doug. It's Doug. My bad. Um, so that you mentioned about the writing, and I think that what I liked about it was that they didn't write the show um to like the lowest common denominator. They wrote it with that, okay, we're gonna write this here, and these our audience is going to be smart enough to keep up. You know, they didn't water it down for the for you know for
For
the
the
people
common
watching,
folk.
you know, for the common folk or whatever. They figure, no, these guys, these are our people. They're sci-fi. They're, you know, they like this kind of stuff that they will understand. They will get on board and take this ride with us. And we don't have to like, okay, let's pull over a minute. Somebody's behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also like that when you was talking about going to the different planets and whatever, that they did have the smarts enough to send the probe first to kind of like check things out a little bit, as you know, as much as it could, because they, you know, of course they never knew where it was going to actually land. Like when they found the water planet, it's like, well, what happened to the probe? It's you know, well, it's floating away.
It's like, yep, there it goes. Well, like in Stargate Atlantis, like they released a probe and it was a space gate.
Yeah, you know, like wait a minute.
Floaty, floaty, floaty. Um, so let's get opinions on the antagonists. So not necessarily the villains, like because not every you know individual that went against our beloved Stargate team was necessarily a villain, but they were antagonists nonetheless. So how did you feel about how the antagonists were like presented? They're the longer lasting ones. What did you like about those? And we'll start with Nightwolf, and then we'll move over to Infernal.
I think the as far as the antagonist with that was um that used like say it wasn't necessarily they was the villain, but when they would land on a different planet, they kind of had to deal with what the um the native people were, you know, even though most of them were human or humanoid type of thing. Most of them were human because they basically had gotten, you know, what was it the Asgardians that basically seeded the universe, you know. So there was a lot more humans out there than anybody ever knew about. um, but they all had their own different types of culture and stuff. And so you have these people show up out of nowhere and sometimes coming through something that these people were worshiping and had no idea it was actually a doorway. And so it's like, wait a minute, you have violated our sacred space and whatever. So I thought that was those were interesting with the you know, with the antagonists that they would run into, and you know, as opposed to just the villains like the Goa'uld or the replicators or and stuff. What do you think, Infernal?
And when it came to antagonists, like the replicators, like they definitely made an impact on me just because of how they operated and how dangerous that they were, especially when they got the upgrade in Stargate Atlantis. Um, but I remember like when it came to antagonists, like God, what were they? Um, I don't think they were ghouls. Were they called the Ori? Like there was like some like the last antagonist.
But the Ori,
Yeah, the Ori. That's why Ori. Um, but yeah, no, like because yeah, the Ori like God, like whenever they were in an episode, I'm just like, okay, so how are we going to deal with them now? Because like I just felt like at times like it was like how do we fight these guys? But
Yeah,
yeah,
it
no,
was
I just
definitely
but
there's so many good qualities that, and it is a great thing that it ran for so long, and that at the time I still think I wouldn't necessarily say it was like innovative and edgy or whatever, but I still think that, especially back then, it was a risk for doing something like Nightwolf said that was written at a higher level than a lot of like shows was, because real there was Andromeda, and then you have the grandfathers of sci-fi with Star Trek and Star Wars. um that was pretty much it. Like you were either on board or you weren't. So
I
to
mean, hey,
be able
don't forget
to
about Eureka.
Eureka came later.
It did. Eureka started, I think, probably a little bit before Atlantis.
So yeah, Stargate definitely made it so Eureka could run.
Oh yeah.
So same with
I'm
Warehouse.
For, like, oh yeah. Well, I'm just saying Eureka just because like the level of like needing to understand stuff.
Yes. And I do believe that shows like Stargate allow them to continue in that. Same with like Dark Matter and like Killjoy's was not necessarily as, you know, high needing to pay attention in the sense of like, oh, okay, all this technology, all these different things, but Killjoy's was more of the kind of the moral gray area of navigation, which really requires you to take some time and introspect, because you'll be rooting for somebody, and then they hit you with the Yagity Boo, and the next thing you know, are like, oh crap, I was rooting for the bad guy. What does that say about me?
It means they did their job well.
Right. And it was so good on the front of that.
I think Killjoys was also one of those shows that was kind of the giving you a new twist of the class system.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's like, so you know, I mean, of course, that's the storyline that's been done many times before, but they added it, you know, by doing it with kind of like in a space or, you know, different planet type of a thing. It really kind of gave it a different feel to an old storyline.
Well, that is our time. So
Already?
Yep, it goes by very quickly. It
Just
goes
when I was having fun, we hadn't even talked about Michael enough, or the major.
Atlantis.
But okay.
But yeah, but we got more. That's why it's a multi-parter. So there will be more discussion. So thank you all who are listening up to this point. If you have listened to the whole episode, drop our real names in the comments. That's how we know you made it this far. Until the next one.
Remember, his name is Doug.
His name is Doug. Until the next one, we love you, and we'll see you around.
See you next time.
Bye.